On August 11th, a powerful derecho hit northwest Indiana, and nearly 2 weeks later, thousands of people in Gary still don't have power. Nobody knew that it was going to be that bad or take that long to recover from, so it's a perfect example of why everyone, not just preppers, should have some basic minimum preps in their home. First up, we have water, and for this, every household should have at least a 1 to 2 week supply of bottled water on hand or stored water in aquatainers or some other portable container. And I know that a lot of y'all watching this are thinking that a 1 to 2 week supply isn't enough, and I totally agree, but the bottom line is that a lot of folks don't have anything beyond what they keep for just regular everyday use. Even though it isn't what we would consider a lot, it is enough to get through most events, or at the very least, give you a decent head start. When figuring out how much water you need, the standard 1 gallon per person per day rule is usually a good way to go about it. But with that, you want to keep a couple of things in mind. First, be sure to have water for your pets and any other animals that you take care of. And then also consider your climate. Right now, most of us are in the hottest part of the summer. Like where I live, we had multiple days in a row hit 100 degrees or above last week. And if you live in an area like that, 1 gallon per day may not be enough. You may also want to go ahead and get some electrolytes as well, since you lose more than just water when you sweat. Then when it comes to food, if you're starting at zero, try to get at least a 3-day to 1 week supply of shelf-stable food as soon as you can. When you're picking these out, do your best to get foods that the folks in your family will actually eat, because there's no sense at all in spending money on stuff that nobody wants. My top choices for a cheap food supply that you could go pick up today would be things like peanut butter, crackers, and then also canned goods. All of those require minimal preparation, and most people already eat them anyway. Peanut butter and crackers make a very good quick lunch, and peanut butter is also incredibly nutrient dense. The only downside to those two foods is their shelf life. The best by dates on both are usually around 6 months or so after they hit shelves, so they're sort of on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to prepper foods. Canned goods, on the other hand, last a whole lot longer. Best by dates on those tend to be at least like 2 years out, but commercially canned food should technically be safe to eat indefinitely unless the can is damaged or something went wrong in the canning process. Like, you might notice things, maybe like degraded texture and taste in canned goods that have been stored beyond their best by dates, but for the most part, they should be safe to eat. Then aside from the food itself, everyone should also have a manual can opener. A lot of us probably already have a crank style version in a drawer somewhere in our house, but if you have a multi-tool or a Swiss Army knife, those usually have can openers too. I actually prefer the can opener on my Swiss Army knife over our real can opener, since it's easier to keep clean. And also be sure that you have plenty of utensils. If you're in a situation where you're trying to conserve water, having some like plastic forks, knives, and spoons, along with the little stash of paper plates, can be very useful. But if you want to expand your food storage beyond items that you can just eat straight from the can or the package, you're gonna need a way to cook off-grid. The good thing about this, though, is that you don't have to spend a ton of money on something fancy. Walmart usually has butane stoves for under $30 each, and you can get a multi-pack of butane cans for less than $10. One can should last for around an hour or two on high, depending on the stove that you have, so most families would only need like maybe 3 to 5 cans to get through a week-long power outage. I really like butane stoves since they can cook pretty much anything that you would cook on your regular stovetop. They're also easy to set up and fairly compact compared to other options. If you have a little more money to spend, you can get a dual fuel stove that uses both butane and propane, or you can get a larger propane stove. One really nice thing about propane camp stoves is that you can connect them to 20-pound cylinders, which is a lot more cost effective than using those little 1-pound bottles. And what we're covering right now is very similar to the basic level 1 preps that I go over in the Well-Rounded Prepper. I show you what the preps at different levels look like, and then what to do next based on where you are right now. If you haven't already picked up your copy, now is a great time to do that. I'm running a $5 off sale from now until 11:59 p.m. Central on August 31st. Just use the link in the description and pinned comment below and type in YouTube 5 at checkout. But after that, we have some basic power and climate control preps, and for this, you don't have to go out and buy a big expensive generator to get started. First, go out and get yourself a few inexpensive battery-powered lights. Even like a janky multi-pack of little cheapy flashlights stuck in different drawers around your house can make a pretty big difference. My favorite kind of throwaway flashlight is the blue light from Harbor Freight. They used to give those out all the time for free, but they kind of stopped doing that, at least as much. But you don't have to get fancy with any of this. Even like this little Energizer lantern that I have here is only around 20 bucks. It's pretty bright and it can run on either D-cell or AA batteries. I've had mine for a couple years now and it's never given me any trouble. After that, get yourself an inexpensive USB battery bank. I like the ones by Anker. This one here is around $24 now, which is more than it used to be, but I think that Anker power banks, they're kind of a good balance between price and quality. I trust them more than I would some bargain barrel lithium battery, but ones like this aren't 50 bucks either. And of course, they can be used to charge cell phones, flashlights, and any other USB device that you have. Just be sure that your cables are compatible with it before you need to use any of that. Then in the well-rounded prepper, I mentioned having some warm blankets and wool layers for everyone in your family, but since we're in the middle of summer right now and it's really honking hot, I'd go ahead and swap that out with a decent battery-powered fan and a stash of batteries to go with it. You could also get other things like misting bottles or even those little personal fans that fit around your neck. I haven't tried one of those yet, but they do look like they'd help. After that, everyone should take some basic steps to prepare their home for an emergency. First, figure out where you and your loved ones would take shelter during severe weather. Most of the time, that's going to be a small room on the lowest level of your home that doesn't have windows and is in the interior of the structure. Now, for my family, that's a challenge since our house is fairly small. Every bedroom, the dining room, and the living room are all along exterior walls and have windows. We don't really have any big closets. So because of all that, our shelter area is our hallway. It's not perfect, but you gotta kind of do the best with what you have. After you figured out which room that you're gonna use, go ahead and stage some basic items like flashlights, a few bottles of water, and a whistle in there so you don't have to scramble to find them in an emergency or get trapped in there without them. Then after that, write down 3 evacuation triggers. These are things that, if they happen, would mean that you pack up and leave. That's really important if you live in a floodplain, an area that could get hit by a hurricane, or somewhere that's prone to wildfires. There's also more universal triggers like industrial accidents that cause some sort of chemical release, or people problems like riots or mass protest. You just want to determine your red lines now while you're not stressed out and still able to think clearly. Another area that every family should have some basic preps for is health, and that includes both medical and sanitation needs. One of the first things everyone should get is a basic Red Cross style first aid kit. While most of us that have been doing this for a while would prefer to build our own med kits, pre-made versions are usually still better than nothing. This one here is by Adventure Medical Kits, and I keep it in my truck. You could get something like this for home use first, and then move it over to a vehicle kit or bug out bag when you're able to build something a little better as your primary kit. Everyone should also have a stash of commonly used medications in their home. If you use prescriptions, try to have at a minimum a 2-week rotating supply, especially if it's for chronic conditions like diabetes or heart issues. But even if you don't use prescriptions, it's still a good idea to have things like pain relievers and fever reducers, stomach medications, or anything that you use regularly like allergy meds. Then when it comes to basic sanitation, have plenty of soap and hand sanitizer. You can also get other things like wet wipes and disinfecting wipes. I like those in hand sanitizer since they let you clean without having to use up all of your water storage. After that, there's security. Now, I know that a lot of folks, when they hear security, they think of guns, and those are a very big part of that, but there's also some basic things that everyone can do to their home, regardless of where they live, that'll make it a lot harder to get into, or at the very least, give you some more reaction time. First, upgrade the locks on all exterior doors to at least ANSI Grade 2 deadbolts. Those are stronger than the Grade 3 locks that are commonly installed by builders and homeowners, and they hold up better against impacts. Another thing you want to do is pair those with 3-inch or longer deck screws for strike plates and other door hardware. Most of the screws used with those are very small and won't provide any resistance to somebody trying to break in. Those longer screws, though, will go all the way down into the stud, and they're a lot harder to get through. If you want to take it a step further, you could install an extended strike plate like the Door Armor Max. Then, if you don't already have one, install a peephole so you can see who's at your door without opening it, and that's a good thing to do even if you have a doorbell camera. Those can go offline if you lose internet access, but a peephole works all the time. And also put a motion activated light at the main entrance of your home so that you can tell if somebody's approaching. Next up, we have communications, and for this, the main goals are to get information about the event that you're dealing with and being able to communicate with loved ones. Now, in the past, I've shown this Midland ER310 emergency radio, and it is a good choice. It can pick up local AM, FM, and NOAA weather stations, and it can be powered a lot of different ways, including its built-in solar panel and hand crank. But one area that it could do better is how it gives you alerts. The ER310 monitors NOAA weather frequencies and will sound an alert if there's a warning issued on the station that you have programmed. While that is useful, you're probably going to end up getting alerts for neighboring counties that don't really apply to you, and that's not something that you want to have to deal with at 3 a.m., so most folks end up just not using that feature. There are radios, though, that use something called SAME, or Specific Area Message Encoding, and those only sound if a warning is issued for your specific county. Many of those are designed to operate from an AC wall outlet, but also have a battery backup for use during power outages. The main downside to them is that the most popular models don't have a built-in hand crank, solar panel, or rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Then, aside from having a good emergency radio, also figure out one out-of-area contact that every adult or mature child in your home knows by heart. It should be written down and also memorized. In some cases, it may be easier to get a phone call to connect to somebody out of state or a couple of 100 miles away than it is to connect to somebody locally. So to get around locally congested phone lines, you and your family members could call your out-of-area person, and then that person could relay information to everybody else. That may not work if the infrastructure is damaged, but knowing to do that does at least give you a better shot of getting in touch. Then finally, everyone should have the basics of their bug out plan decided and written down. While bugging out should almost always be considered a last resort, there are times where it could be necessary. You just want your preps to be flexible so that you can do whatever you need to do based on the particular situation that you're in. First, pick one specific destination at least 20 miles away. It could be a friend or relative's house. This would be where you would go in most normal, run-of-the-mill situations like extended blackouts and hot weather or small localized weather events. But if you live somewhere that experiences hurricanes or wildfires, your primary destination should be more than 20 miles away. Then start following the half-tank refill rule. Basically, all that is just refilling your gas tank when it reaches the halfway point, rather than getting gas when your light comes on. Honestly, that's something that I need to do a lot better on. My Jeep drinks gas like crazy, and I tend to let it get lower than what I should. I rarely drive more than 5 miles away from home, though, and I am better about doing that when I have to go a little further away, but I do need to fix it. And finally, stage an evacuation bag close to the door. The best thing for that would be bug out bags for every member of your family, but if you don't have that yet, even having some basic things like bottles of water, some cash, and a little bit of food is a whole lot better than nothing. Now, if you want to see an in-depth look at the different layers of prepper water storage, then click here, or if you want to see critical items to get before September 1st, then click here. And also, don't forget that you can get the Well-Rounded Prepper for $5 off from now until August 31st. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.